Alright guys, welcome to the poached salmon and asparagus cooking demo video for Thursday night on the meal planner this week. And as I mentioned in my intro video, poaching fish and other proteins is a fantastic way if you're having problems cutting back on a couple calories. That poaching either fish or vegetables, cooking in liquid is what that means, is a great way to save a couple calories and infuse a bunch of flavor in there. And as you know, at Chef Theory Health, I don't harp on calorie counting in that part of it, but calories do matter. We just want to make sure we're getting our nutrients in first. And when we focus on the whole foods based eating like we're going to be doing here today, we don't have to worry about counting calories. But poaching your fish like this is a great way to add some flavor that we do at the restaurant. Now, I'm going to go ahead and crank this guy up here. And I got 3 salmon fillets. I already started my quinoa that we're doing with this one off on the side. I'm just going to kind of arrange my salmon fillets around like this. It doesn't matter too much on that aspect. Again, I don't have it on the meal planner or this recipe specifically, but I mentioned in the meal planner overview, if you want to throw a little glug of white wine in there, Chardonnay, Pinot Grigio, it'd be a fantastic addition, and that's typically what we do at a restaurant. And so we'll just throw a little bit of garlic in there. And then we're going to add our vegetable broth. If you have chicken broth or seafood broth, clam base, that'll work just fine too. We can always add more. So I'm going to bring it up to about halfway up the fish there, and we can add some more in later if we'd like to. Parsley, dill, some fresh herbs to go in here. Now I like to go 2 ways with this. I'm going to use the dill in the poaching liquid. We can just throw a little bit, that's where I'm going to put my asparagus. So I'm going to go the dill a little bit more around the outside here. And I'm going to chop up a little bit of fresh dill that'll reserve off on the side too. Alright, so we got our dill in there. Got a half a lemon, which I'm going to squeeze it through my hand and trying to catch any seeds that pop out in the juice, and you can kind of catch it in your hand. If you got a little strainer, you can always use a little strainer, but I just go through my hand there. And that is literally it for the base right there, guys. So we're going to bring this up to a simmer, and then we're going to throw our lid on it. And one other thing I wanted to show you here, as I'm getting our asparagus prepped and waiting for this to come up to a boil, is when you're prepping asparagus, usually comes bundled up like this in rubber bands. You're going to cut about the bottom, sometimes quarter, 15% of it off. Kind of right where that first rubber band is. I'll leave the other rubber band on it just to help keep everything together. And then give that guy a chop. Then you could use that for vegetable stocks. You could use it for soup. You could chuck it if you so desired. And then you got your asparagus all ready to go here. Call for 4 cups in the recipe. It's hard to measure 4 cups of asparagus. But to me, if I were going to do about 2, 3, 4 pieces, 1 to 2 bunches is what's going to kind of fit in there in the middle. As you can see, we're coming up to a boil here around the edges of this pan. And the other thing I want to show you is make do with what you have, right? Like, I don't have a perfect fitting lid for this exact saute pan. It's nice if you do have a frying pan that has a tight fitting lid on there, but use what you have there. If you needed to go with a piece of tinfoil over that, you could do that as well. But once it comes up to the simmer here, that's how we want it. We don't want it to be a rolling boil to poach this fish. Once it comes up to the strong simmer, I'm going to keep turning it down a little bit and let it go. Now, in the directions of the recipe, we say about 5 minutes until we add in our asparagus here. And so I'm going to pause the video now. I'm going to turn down to a low simmer, a nice light simmer. We're going to pause and I'll rejoin you in about 5. All right, guys, we're about 5 minutes in here, and our salmon is coming along nicely. One thing I didn't mention earlier is that not only is poaching fish or vegetables a great way to infuse flavor, save a couple calories, but it also is a fast way to cook. Alright, now one thing I'm going to do here, I'm going to pile a little pile in here, but I'm also going to nestle some around the outside to kind of spread out this asparagus and just make sure it cooks evenly and steams evenly. Can't go too far though because my lid doesn't go too far over it. But like I said, a nice light steam. Once you cover it up, it'll keep going real well. Now, asparagus will cook way quicker than your salmon will. So we're gonna let that go. I said a couple minutes in the recipe there. It could take 4 minutes. Really, what we're gonna look for is like a couple minutes after that steam really gets back at it. So you could kind of, like what I'm gonna do here is I'm gonna crank it back up until I see it steaming away again. And while I'm kind of waiting for that, I'm gonna mince up a little bit of dill that we can finish off and just sprinkle over the whole dish. When you cook with fresh herbs, really you don't want to cook them for much more than 30 seconds if you want to maintain the bright and vibrant flavor. So I like to cook with the herbs and let them simmer in here, and it adds a depth of not subtle, but a more mellow depth of flavor. And then I'll finish it off after we turn off the heat with a little bit of fresh dill or when I plate it, and that'll balance out with a nice vibrant herb flavor along with the kind of mellow flavor that you do with the long-term cooking of the herb. So as you can see, it's coming back up to boil here that quickly. I'm going to turn it back down. I've got 5 minutes left on my quinoa timer, which will be about perfect to go along with this, and I'll check back in with you there. Alright guys, welcome back here, and there is my 5-minute timer I mentioned. I'm going to turn off my quinoa. We'll turn off the timer. We'll open up. And really, how long you have to steam your asparagus for is going to depend on how well done you like it. To me, that's got a perfect little bit, still a little bit of a snap to it, but how well done you like it, but also how thick your asparagus is. And then this was ready to go here. Now, what I do encourage you to not do is do not throw away this cooking liquid. In the restaurant, if we were going to run this dish as a special or run it as an entree here, we're going to take that cooking liquid, we're going to finish it with a little heavy cream and or maybe butter and serve it up that way. Now, if you want to use a little bit of butter to mount it after you reduce it down a little bit, you could do that. But both of those are going to kind of defeat the purpose of what I mentioned earlier of, you know, a naturally low-calorie dish here. So I'm going to remove these guys and just show you what I would do here in the restaurant. Throw that guy there. Is really a little fresh dill on top there. Crank it up a little bit. Just because you don't need that much liquid here. So if you're not going to use it as a sauce, finishing sauce here, you could certainly use it for cooking a different dish. Like if you remember a couple weeks ago I did an Alfredo with arrowroot powder and coconut milk and some nutritional yeast, and that would be a great use for this if you're going to do like a seafoody type of Alfredo sauce, if you're going to do a soup, if you're going to cook other vegetables or fish. Using this is going to add a more depth of flavor rather than just vegetable broth. So, but if you let this reduce down a little bit and then add in, you know, 2 tablespoons of butter to this and swirl it around and divide it between your couple of dishes there, that'll give you a beautiful, nice finishing sauce that we have going on there. So I'm just going to pause it for a quick second, and then I'll show you after it reduces for a minute what that looks like. Alright, so we've let this reduce down for just a minute here. We probably have less than a cup of finished liquid here. Still got the remains of the salmon in there. That's all flavor, guys. And again, you don't have to do this. You could just sprinkle a little bit of this over your quinoa and salmon, and that's going to be fantastic. If you're looking for a little added sauce and richness, we're going to reduce this down like I just did by half, and we're going to add in 2 tablespoons of butter, turn off the heat, and just kind of swirl this in. And that kind of mounting the butter in this fashion here. It's going to add just a little bit of body to the sauce, not a ton. It's not going to be a super thick sauce. A little bit of body and certainly some richness. That's how we kind of would describe it in the restaurant there. And then you just take some of this sauce, drizzle it over your fish, and you have a flavorful and healthy and quick and easy lemon-dill poached salmon with asparagus and quinoa. Enjoy, guys. Happy eating.